esoteric philosophy for later and just get into some practical things. What were we going to do? I think we were going to dress Radharani, and then Korma is supposed to come and do a turban today. I'll show some different ways that I like to do the turban. I'm sure he has other varieties. So as far as I remember, we did rings on Jam also. Usually I put 3 rings on these fingers. I don't totally clutter his hand with 3. Usually 3. A bigger ring here on his ring finger, or a signet ring, and then 2 smaller rings. And then usually I put 1 ring at least on his ring finger here. Sometimes there's another ring there. And I usually put a toe ring and 2 more rings here, because usually, it starts to look like just a mess of rings. If you put too many, it doesn't allow his toes to show rings. But as far as Radharani's rings are concerned, this should be noted. On Radharani's right hand, is mentioned in Shastra, at least this description I read. I forget whether it was Govinda Lilamrita or Krishna Bhavanamrita, one of those 2, where it's describing the morning dressing of Srimati Radharani at Yadav. So in that book, it describes that on her right hand, she only wears 2 rings. One is on her small finger, and one is on her ring finger. The signet ring will be on her ring finger. In other words, it will be a larger ring on her ring finger, and naturally because the small finger is smaller, it should be a smaller, more delicate ring. And on her left hand, there are rings on all 4 fingers and her thumb. The bigger ring will be on her ring finger, and a very small ring on her pinky, small little finger, and then a slightly bigger ring on her thumb. And usually the way I do it is if I have to, if I don't have small enough rings, sometimes is the situation. I'll make sure that there's a small ring between 2 larger rings. The largest ring will be on a ring finger, and a small ring in between, and then maybe a larger ring here because there's more room to deal with it. All 5 fingers, 4 fingers in the thumb, on her left hand, will be having rings. These rings are way too big. And remember, when you put on rings, you don't want any blue tack to show. So very often, the easiest way to deal with that is to pull a larger mass of blue tack toward the back of the ring, so that when you put the ring on, the front goes easily to the surface of the finger, and the back, where the more blue tack would be, which would be holding it in place, that would not be seen unless you're going at it from an angle. We'll have to just budget, because there's smaller rings. Let's pretend that's a smaller ring. try to do this quickly so that we have more time for you to do it. Well, usually I like to show some of his hand. So I'll put one on his finger, the lead finger, put one on his ring finger, one on his finger. And usually it's better to have a taller ring, you can say, rounding up a little more on this back finger just so you can see it. Because usually the back finger is going, different deities are shaped differently, but this gives you a chance to see that there is a ring there. But can you understand what I've done wrong? Think what I said yesterday.
You're jumping. You're jumping from the ground to...
No, that's not a... Usually you dress one first. I'm just catching up for what I didn't do yesterday. Huh?
You need to put the toe rings and the...
No, I've already put the toe rings.
Yeah.
Yesterday we put the toe rings. But it does have something to do with order.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You just put the toe ring, one toe ring just now.
No, that's for him.
Yeah.
That doesn't...
Okay, for other...
Yeah, that doesn't matter really.
Did you put the body?
Huh? No. Remember, I was making a point about how you don't want to do things which complicate your job. You have to do things in layers, systematically. You know, the inside layer has to be done first, then the outside layer. Just like you don't want to put her outside dress and then realize you didn't put her underskirt. You know. So similarly, you wouldn't want to put all of her necklaces and then realize you didn't put the belt, and then you have to go under the necklaces, you know, to get the belt on, and that messes up whatever you've done. See? So similarly, just now, I put on the rings, but yeah, the bangles, especially if it's a bangle that is an expanding type or whatever, it has to slip over her hand. It's one thing if the bangle like this, you know, could go on easily without any problem. But if this is also no real problem. Many times you have these kind of bangles that are elastic. So it's better to get in the habit, just so you can have that option of whichever bangle you want. Just get in the habit of putting the bangles on first, and then put the rings on after you put the bangles on. Yeah, these expanding kind of bangles. Yeah. I wonder if because if you try to get it in the under, let it drag, you know. Can be done, but it's usually a little disastrous. So it's important to remember the idea of putting on systematically. in layers, bottom up and inside out. One more. I usually put 3 rings on each toe. Like that. These bracelets.
Is there any importance of order when you're doing jewelry, like starting with the feet and working your way?
Yeah, usually just so that the idea is that I don't think that there's a rule as such, but the idea is that you want to do it so that as you're dressing the deity, you leave behind, finished, steps.
So there's nothing like controversial about starting with the feet?
No, well, not the idea. Generally, you would. There's in Radha Krishna Leela, there are many different devotees, Sakis dressing up, or Sakas dressing Krishna, Sakis dressing Radharani, like that. Sometimes the Sakis also dress Krishna, but there's many devotees simultaneously. Someone's combing the hair, someone's, they do it in an order, but at times there are different people doing different things at the same time also. But usually what I would do, because sometimes devotees have a tendency to forget to put on the ankle bracelets. They get absorbed, they think dressing the deity is the garland, So finally they get the garland on and they forget, oh no, I didn't put on the belt or something. And then, or they get everything on, but then the curtains open and, oh no, I forgot to put on ankle bells. So you have to, it's better to work from the bottom up. First put on the ankle bells, put on, bathe him, then put on his dhoti, put on his ankle bells. Do the basic things, the dhoti, the belt can even come later, but dhoti and ankle bells, get the ankle bells done so that you don't have to think about it anymore. You don't have to remember that you shouldn't forget. You've already done it. And then put on the rings, and then move up, and put on the sash, then the belt, and then do the chadar, because the chadar sometimes comes over different ways, so you want to get the belt done first before you put the chadar on. Put the chadar on, then put the garland, and then put the necklaces after the garland. On Radharani it's different. You put the necklace on first, and then you put the garland. But for Shyamsundar it's easier to deal with because you have to put the garland in first, right? You understand? The garland goes in first. Then you put the necklaces. And then, like you have to remember not to put the earrings on before you put the necklaces on. The simple things, common sense things, But devotees make mistakes. They get excited about dressing the deity. And then they put the earrings on because and then they go, oh no. Then they try to get the necklace on and the earrings getting in the way of the necklace, and then they have to end up wasting time. Because you're pressed for time. The time is cruel. Clock is, running. And the curtain's going to open and all the Maharajas are going to be stamping their dundas, what's going on? So, yes, earrings. I usually like dangling earrings. There's not much of dangling earrings. We'll pretend. As we put the necklace on. Sometimes they have the makara-shaped earrings. Depending on that doesn't always look good. Sometimes it's nice. He doesn't have a flute. I could show you some interesting ways. Maybe if we can arrange for a flute. Yeah, anything. and then tomorrow or whenever we can arrange for that, and I can show you some interesting ways of wrapping the flute garlands. You know, sometimes I like to put it, because I'm fond of Krishna's flute. My favorite chapter in the Krishna book, from the very first time I read the Krishna book, when I was a new bhakta, was the gopis attracted by the flute. That was my favorite chapter. So that's part of my Krishna conscious fiber. Is Krishna's flute. So I like to decorate his flute. And there's different ways of doing it. Is there hair? Well, we can do that. And, okay, so now, remember the choker goes first. We're going to have a choker here for Radharani. That has to go first. And then the longer strings of pearls goes after you from the choker. First belt. Usually I do the toe rings, and then I do get the rings done. You know, first do the toe rings and ankle bracelet, then the wrist bracelet, and the ankle bracelet, toe rings. And that helps to keep your mind a little organized. You know, ankle bracelets and the toe rings, then wrist bracelet and the finger rings, and then belt. And after the belt, the choker. You got it? So, pretend this is the choker. I know a lot of people like to do it, but I feel that if you pile all kinds of things up, you know, so that it looks a little stuffy, you know, that's my personal opinion. Some people think it looks more opulent, you know, like Queen Elizabeth or somebody, you know, with stuff all up around her neck. You know, but personally, I like to keep it a little light. This is a little heavy in my opinion, but I would prefer something lighter. The mark of an artist, because this is an art, is that you can take a piece of junk and make it look good, and that you have to, you know, be willing to do. Like we were discussing yesterday about two levels of ruchi, as mentioned in Madhurya Kadambini. 2 levels of ruchi, one with accoutrements and one without accoutrements. In other words, when you're dependent on accoutrements, then you want to worship the deities. When the deities, you know, have all nice paraphernalia, silver paraphernalia, and all nice, you know, jewelry and nice dresses, then you feel inspired to worship the deity. But sometimes, you know, in different circumstances, and it depends on how poor you are, you know how poor the temple is, you may not have, you know, the best paraphernalia. You may not have the most attractive jewelry, but you have to think, you know, how to make them look as nice as possible, you know, and that's a mark of your devotion to the deity. You're not dependent on it. And your enthusiasm will show. Just like if someone is doing kirtan, even, you'll see how they're enthusiastic about chanting Hare Krishna. Or if they're preaching in some way, giving Bhagavatam class, you'll see that some people are more enthusiastic. So your enthusiasm shows through your service, like that. So similarly, the love for the deity is seen, you know.
Do you have favorite pieces of jewelry that you use a lot?
Yeah, I do. Things that I think look nicer, you know. But you know, one man's food is another man's poison. So ultimately, we have to come to the platform of becoming aware, at least in terms of gradually absorbing ourselves in the internal meditation. Because in some places, in in Hari Bhakti Vilas, forgive me for bringing that book into the picture, but it does say that if you don't do Manasi Seva before you do the actual external Seva, then your external Seva will bear no fruit. Your puja will bear no fruit. So the internal Seva, like we were mentioning yesterday, of the Bhuta Shuddhi, for internally conceiving of yourself as being something beyond what you are physically, but that has to be, gradually evolved in terms of your spiritual elevation. It's not that you just go around imagining yourself to be something, but you should know that you are, a spiritual entity, and you have a spiritual form and all these things. So similarly, how you're going to participate in your Manasi Seva, you have to be something. You're not going to just be, what's your name? I forget your name.
Dharmadas.
Dharmadas. You're not going to be a Dharmadas there. You're going to be some other, delightful entity. So then you're going to be thinking in terms of how Radharani likes to be dressed, not just what you like. That's an important point. Is that you have to start becoming perceptive of what the deity wants, because after all, they're persons, and there may be things that they just don't like. And sometimes, you put something on, and the deity throws it off, and you put it back on because you insist, but then throws it off again. Then you have to start thinking that, well, maybe the deity doesn't like what you're putting on. So then try something else. There is a certain amount of relationship that has to actually be cultivated, toward in the service of the deity. So, and as you serve the deity, basically you become more and more familiar. Not familiar in the sense that familiarity breeds contempt, but familiar in the sense that you become perceptive of what the deity is all about. And then gradually, as you make advancement, and you start to become more aware of what Radharani likes according to Shastra, just like we made this point about the rings. You know that Radharani wears this kind of rings. So then if you become aware of that, just like I don't think we have too many peacock feathers here, but in a book called Rajabriti Chintamani, and also in other books, there's a description of how Radharani loves to decorate her braids with peacock feathers. And Govinda Lilamrita describes how she has two braids, and they come and they merge into one braid. But practically you don't see that very much. She has two braids coming from the back, and they merge into one braid. And then usually, if she's going to have it coming forward, she would have it over her left shoulder. Sometimes I put it over the right shoulder, just to be different according to the way I swing the garland or whatever. But I know, really, that she prefers to have it over her left shoulder. Also, another thing is that Krishna does actually like to wear this dangling nose ring here. Usually what I do is that you see how the top of the pin is kind of shaped like a teardrop. So if I don't have anything else, I'll take wire clippers and cut the pin head off and use the pin head and just put a little blue tack behind and put it there to more or less simulate, the dangling of that elephant pearl.
Somebody said that on Thai, she may not have instruments.
Yeah, that's going to touch. Yeah, generally, I remember hearing, I didn't hear Prabhupada directly say it, but since my very beginning, I was trained that Gaura should not be having gopi dots or anything. But we do read in Shastra that his face is sometimes decorated with musk tilak, and so, But the real thing is that it should be, of course, tastefully someone's going to think that it's tastefully, and someone's going to think that it's not so tasteful, you know. But the main principle is just like, generally, I don't like to, although it does mention in Shastra how the Sakis decorate Radharani's face by drawing various pictures of mangoes or dolphins or different kinds of pictures on her cheeks and this and that. But personally, you know, I like the way Radharani is like she is, you know. And if I do put any gopi dots around, which I like to do also sometimes, but they'll be very light. Not that it looks so heavy that it distracts from the beautiful features of her face, you see. So in the same way, whatever you do, you know, shouldn't be too outrageous, you know, that it kind of like makes you look at the outrageous thing that you did instead of looking at Krishna. Right. Let's see what we have in the way of that. Generally, I don't like these kind of necklaces that are stuck onto the string. These are okay for like if you want to wrap or it's best if you have time and you do it beforehand. You take it apart for free so that the kuchi can be also because this is the kuchi here. And there's you see as it goes up, you understand? It's connected here. But as you're entwining the kuchi and the triveni, then this can also be, there can be pearls also done inside the entwining process. That's the best thing. But if you're pinched for time and that's not done, which happens a lot, and what we usually do in Vrindavan is we just wrap it around like this. And usually the easy way to deal with it, flower garlands is another thing, but when you have pearls, the easiest way is to wrap it starting from the top. But that's another subject matter. We'll get to in a minute. Just actually will it fit? Maybe. Yeah. I'll see how you can play with that anyway.
Krishna's very expert.
Yeah. It's going toward his cheek. So another thing here is when you put the back of the necklaces, when you put the necklaces on, you start small, more delicate, and then you gradually get bigger. And usually I put on at least 3, sometimes 4, and rarely 5 necklaces. That gets a little bit too Aishwarya for me. But 3 is okay. And 4 sometimes, depending on, a lot of it has to do like, I'm not actually able to, next year we should get outfits with color coordinated jewelry so that we can demonstrate what color coordination is all about, because it's one of the most important aspects of dressing the deity, is to make sure that whatever colors you have, but I'll just tell you the theory, in theory, whatever colors you choose from the deity, you should choose the colors that are corresponding to different colors in the outfit. Not that see here we have a pink and blue and white and gold outfit, light blue, and a little like turquoise here. Huh? So you wouldn't be putting purple. You read my mind. You wouldn't be putting purple. You wouldn't be putting orange. Or green, like this green. And you shouldn't be thinking, at least this is my school of thinking. Is that you shouldn't be thinking that, well, the peacock feather has green in it, therefore I'll put green. Or the Tulsi Mala on Krishna has green. Flowers are flowers. If you can actually match the flowers, that's best. But if you don't have matching flowers, relegate flowers to the realm of flowers. And relegate jewelry to the realm of ornaments which are complementing the dress. That's my experience, my personal opinion. So let's see what we're going to do with this. Pardon me. That's all. I'll just go through. See how it's rolling to the side? Like that, so you want to keep it together. We have to dress the deity like that, as we were mentioning yesterday, so as to avoid offense. If unqualified people, you may become materially affected. And usually, I try to have them evenly spaced, like this, in consecutive order. And usually you have to, this is where our blue tack kata yesterday comes to mind. Because here's a situation where you use a little blue tack to hold it in place. But then blue tack invariably gets stuck onto the blouse, right? So then, when the night dressing for jewelry takes the jewelry off, then you should be mindful to take the wad of blue tack and just take it off, because otherwise, if he doesn't take it off, someone else is going to come along and do the same thing, and then someone else is going to come along and do the same thing, and pretty soon you have a blouse full of blue tack. And then because dust is in the atmosphere, dust gets on it, and the blue tack starts getting brown and starts looking very niggardly.